So I have a very, very important announcement, and I guess you should all listen to it very carefully because it relates to each and every one. We're going to serve lunch at 2 p.m. So may I request RI Director Mohammed Faiz Kidwai for the next session? It's no hold bars.
It's a pleasure indeed to be the facilitator for this session, the third plenary session, no holds barred. An open discussion with our leadership. And friends, we have an extremely interesting program laid out for you with some of Rotary's top personalities, moderated by past Rotary International President, Ravindran. Without delay, let me briefly introduce you to the moderator as well as the panelists. Ravindran, past Rotary International President Barry Risen, when he introduced Ravi at the Seoul Convention, said, Ravi brought in a business-like management style, seeking productivity, accountability, and transparency at every level. He expanded training of the board in non-profit governance, created a rigorous system of measuring the board members and secretariat, as well as introduced electronic voting at board meetings. He focused on driving costs down, leading by personal examples, and succeeded to the extent of more than $2.5 million of reduction of operational expenses. He was chairman of the trustees during the peak of COVID, and yet the foundation raised an all-time record of $441 million. It also sanctioned 1,957 global grants, which is more than a 40% increase in approvals since year 2020. The total program awards reached an excess of $340 million US. Friends, I wish to invite the moderator, Ravindran, Rotary International past President Ravindran. Amongst the panelists, we have with us the Rotary International. Rotary International is a complex organization to administer. Driving this organization is our CEO and General Secretary, John Hewko. Apart from the billions of dollars it administers, it deals in over 150 currencies and a multiple of languages, employs over 600 staff worldwide in 6 offices. If we are running it so efficiently, then credit must go to John Hewko, who has been at the helm of affairs in the Secretariat for over 10 years. John was previously with the law firm Baker & McKenzie for 15 years, culminating as its managing partner for its offices in Kiev and Prague. It is said that Baker and John is a graduate of Harvard and Oxford. He also raises tons of money for Rotary with the cycling endeavors and has represented us at many international forums, spoken on many radio and TV channel talk shows, and has been a great diplomat for Rotary and a massive asset to all its presidents. I present to you the Rotary International General Secretary, John Hewko. The second panelist we have is Bharat Pandya. Everyone loves this quite soft-spoken man with his tons of knowledge and his photographic memory. He has shown that it's possible to climb up the Rotary ladder, be a leader in service activities, and not sacrifice his profession. He is practicing general and laparoscopic surgeon. He and his wife, Madhavi, a gynecologist, own a private hospital in Mumbai. He is a fellow of the International College of Surgeons. He served Rotary with distinction as its director and treasurer, and now is the vice chair designate for the Trustee of Rotary Foundation. He is a hands-on Rotarian, having led numerous foundation-funded projects focused on water and sanitation. Friends, I present to you Trustee Bharat Pandya. Nicki Scott is our third panelist. She is currently the Vice President of Rotary International. An English lady by birth, Nicki began her career with KPMG before becoming an entrepreneur and owning a business focused on brand promotion and companies including Nestle, Procter & Gamble, and Rolls-Royce. Combining that with her experience in corporate finance, strategic planning, and change management, Scott went on to mentor and coach CEOs and business owners for Vistage worldwide. She has the remarkable distinction of having been DG of District in Illinois, USA, and then being picked up as director from UK. Her passion are strategy, leadership, coaching, and motivational speaking, which she hopes to use in Rotary to nurture the generation of leaders. May I present to you Nicki Scott. And finally, Stephanie Urchick is the president nominee of Rotary International, becoming the second lady to reach this position. She is a partner and chief operating officer of Doctors at Work, a consulting and training company. She holds a doctorate in leadership studies from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. She is active on numerous community boards and committees and has been honored by organizations like Zonta International and the Sons of the American Revolution. A Rotary member since 1996, Urchick has traveled to Vietnam to help build a primary school and to the Dominican Republic to install water filters. She studies several Slavic languages, has mentored new Rotarians in Ukraine, and coordinated a Rotary Foundation grant in Poland. We look forward with excitement to her year as president, and interestingly, she says making regionalization is a priority. I present to you our Rotary National President nominee, Stephen Urchick. And I give the floor to past Rotary International President, K.R. Ravindran.
Okay, friends, we have assembled here the sharpest brains in Rotary, except myself. And in the next 1 hour, we're going to traverse a whole lot of subjects. And we're going to give you a glimpse of the types of things that we discuss at a board. We're going to show you that we don't always agree on the same things, but we will agree to disagree in a very agreeable manner. And some of the things we'll discuss may not even reach you. So here is the way, or here are the subjects that the board would deal with. And with a group like this, there's nothing that I throw at them that they can't handle with ease. So we're going to start with General Secretary John Hewko. John, I know him for a long, long time. In fact, I was on the team which picked John Hewko And I can tell you that time we had some formidable candidates, but he was head and shoulders above all of them. And I'm so happy you've been with us for so long, John. John, I have a question for you. You know, 35% of our membership of Rotary is now in Asia, which includes India, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Philippines, many of them here. And then we have 27% of foundation giving coming from Asia. Now, each year, Pricewaterhouse predicts the largest economies in the world by 2050. And Pricewaterhouse prediction for the top 5 economies by 2050, no surprise. Half of them are the top 5, 3 of them are in Asia. Now, when you look at corporates, Burger King moved its headquarters from US to Canada. Budweiser moved from US to Belgium. Purina moved from US to Switzerland. Others have moved to Panama, Sweden, UK. John, why don't we get Rotary headquarters out from Evanston to Singapore or someplace?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi, for that interesting question. I get it quite a bit, and it's an important question. So thank you for raising it. I think the metrics that you threw out in terms of a percentage of our membership being in a given region or the amount of giving coming to the foundation is a metric which one could use to sort of think about where our headquarters should be. I don't think it's the most appropriate or valid metric, because if you look at the Rotary world today, we really have 3 areas that are sort of unequal. Depends on how you define a region, right? The way you've defined Asia, it's at 27%, 35% of our membership, 27% of our giving. And yet North America, even though we're seeing membership declines there, is still around 30%. That's another region that's almost equal to Asia, however you define it. And then you have Europe, which is in the high 20s as a percentage of Rotary membership. So we currently have 3 sort of large geographic blocks in Rotary, and the question then comes in, which of these blocks should have the office? I don't think that's an appropriate metric, nor looking at foundation giving, because North America, the United States, still gives almost 50% to the Rotary Foundation. And if you look at planned giving, what we anticipate getting from North America once our membership there passes away in terms of estate planning, it's in the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So the question for me then is, what is the right metric to look at when we think about this issue of where Rotary's headquarters should be? And for me, the right metric is quite straightforward. What is the right business decision, and what is the right operational decision? In other words, where can we place our headquarters in a way that makes business sense, that makes financial sense, but most importantly, what makes most operational sense? I think if we look at it that way, I don't think in today it makes business or operational or financial sense to move our headquarters. You talked about 2050 and the top 5 economies of the world. That's 28 years from now. And in 28 years, the world may change, and at that point, the business case and the operational case may be there, and we would think about moving our headquarters. I don't think that's the case today for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, what COVID has taught us is that the world is flat. Thomas Friedman's famous book, The World is Flat. And we learned through COVID that in some ways it really, because of the use of technology now, it really doesn't matter where a corporation or an organization such as Rotary has its headquarters. We can fairly pretty much operate from everywhere. Second, the issue of cost. We have about 500 employees, a little over 500 employees in Evanston. We own a building there. The financial cost of shutting that operation down, moving 500 employees to some other location, the costs involved in all of that, the chance of 500 people moving is 0. You're going to have to rehire an entire new secretariat, 117 years of experience and history of staff talent and expertise. That's going to be very, very difficult and very costly to replace. And then for what benefit? What is the operational or financial issue that we're trying to resolve? Quite apart from the psychological one of, gee, it'd be nice to have the headquarters in our region. What are the operational and financial issues we're trying to resolve with that move. If they're there, we need to move. I don't think they're there yet. Third, we are in the Secretariat, certainly since I became the General Secretary, moving aggressively to devolve authority and resources to our region, to our offices outside of the United States. Let's not forget, Ravi, we have 7 regional offices already, and they're designed to put Secretariat staff closer to where the Rotarians are, the same language, the same time zone, etc. And certainly under my tenure, we have aggressively moved to diminish Evanston in the sense of every new position that comes open in Evanston, we look at whether that would be better placed in the offices outside the United States. So we are already moving toward a much more decentralized, much more non-Evanston-based Secretariat supporting Rotarians around the world, particularly in those areas like this part where we're seeing a significant growth in membership. And then finally, and I think this is the most important one, and that has to go with the concept of regionalization. I know in my remarks to at the Getz, I talked about, and we all are now talking about, the importance of regionalization, how Rotary is evolving differently in different parts of the world. And as part of that consequence and analysis, we're now running a pilot in Zone 8, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands. We're running a pilot in Great Britain, Ireland, which Nicki can talk about at great length. And part of the concept there is to create, among other things, perhaps more appropriate regional governance structures. And so if we find that one or both of these pilots are successful, and if the rest of the Rotary world feels that this is an appropriate way to go, we're going to start seeing, Ravi, the development of secretariats, for lack of a better word, in each of the relevant regions, precisely to bring governance, bring decision-making closer to the Rotarians. So I think on that basis alone, it's really premature at this point, in my view, to be talking about moving Evanston. I'd like to see, we should see as an organization, how this regionalization plays out, how these pilots play out, and then figure out, does it make operational and does it make financial sense? Does it make governance sense to move from Evanston? Currently, my view is it does not.
Thanks, John. Okay, guys, so we're stuck with Evanston for another 20 years, I think. But picking up on what you said, I want to go to Nicki Scott. Nicki, pursuant to the COL action this year, 2 regions of the world were allowed to experiment with changes to the volunteer governance structure, a move which our good friend Barry Racine has shared with me many times off the table. You have led the charge most admirably. You do have a challenge with a rapidly aging population in some of these places. Nicki, what do you say about it? What are your chances of success? I know it's a simple question, but...
Simple question. Well, first of all, chances of success. I hope that there's enough Rotarians left in Great Britain and Ireland who are still passionate enough about what an incredible organization this is to make sure that we reinforce the future. But it is true, over 2/3 of our Rotarians are possibly over 80. We don't know exactly because we don't have the statistics. But no matter how much we focus on retention, many of them are going to higher service anyway, right? We might get a bequest society in before they go. But I think it is a real problem. And so we are having to think differently. And one thing I will say that is paramount of what we're trying to do in Great Britain is to focus more on continuity. You know, I think we have so many individual districts that are so disparate in the way they are run, and picking up off Dr. Siva's presentation earlier, they become little fiefdoms if we're not careful. So I think it's very much something that we hope will help is to create what we've created as a regional board with 3-year terms, with diverse skill sets. And the idea is that that will have a chance for us to think more long term. There was a comment earlier, I think, about how we do think longer term. But is that really true? All of our metrics, all of our award systems are put in place to focus on short-term gain. If you look at the most successful organizations, they have to balance longer-term achievement with shorter-term focus. So by putting in a regional board, we're going to do our absolute best to hopefully ensure some success. It is not about getting rid of districts. I want to be really clear about that. Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, we're working with our district structure, but we're clustering. We're clustering the districts to be more collaborative, for greater impact, to expand our reach, and basically see how we can adapt. There's a lot of resistance to change. People fear change. But I think if you understand why it's necessary, and I invite anyone else who thinks they're not in the same position to consider if they're being at all complacent. Because when you're in a position of success, that can encourage complacency. We've left it a little too late, but we're going to have a darn good go. Thank you.
Thank you. Panelists, yes, Sifi.
I just want to add a few comments to what Nicki has said, and just to remind all of us that, you know, the reason we have pilots, pilot is a test. And, you know, these two areas of the world came to Rotary and said, the way we're working and doing Rotary isn't working for us. We're not growing. We're not looking at a good future. Let us try something different. So they're going to try something different, and hopefully it's going to work. If it doesn't, then that means they've just found one way that isn't going to work, and they're going to continue to look for things that will work. I know you all have heard the story about Thomas Edison and how many times he tried to invent the light bulb. So those were not failures, they were just ways that weren't going to work. So as we look at the way Rotary is evolving and transforming and changing, we have to remember that those ideas will come from you. They're not going to come from Rotary headquarters. They're going to come from you, because you know your areas, you know your zones, your districts, your clubs better than anybody else. So you will know what the difficulties are, you will know what the challenges are, and you will know how to design things that you can then pilot, you can test to see if it will work.
Thank you. Can I just add one last thing? It's not about structure only. You know, many people say, why are you just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? It is not about structure. It's about product and offering. It's about value to the members. And it's about changing, shifting a culture towards something that is more adaptive to the current environment. We've moved on a lot in 118 years. The world has, but Rotary just isn't keeping up.
Great, Nicki, that sounds exciting. Let's see the results now. Growing membership, Steffi, I want to ask you this. Growing membership globally has been a struggle. We all know that. In July 2021, by adding Rotaract members to the equation, we shifted from talking about 1.2 million Rotarians to talking about 1.4 million Rotary members. Well, that did raise some eyebrows. Last year, Rotaract membership actually dropped by 11,000. Now, I'm wondering when we start charging Rotaract numbers, whether they're going to decrease further. And the question I have for you, are we going to continue with this figure of 1.2 million or 1.4 million? Or are we going to use both to suit the occasion?
Thanks for such an easy question. You know, when we, as an organization, invited Rotaractors into the fold of Rotary, and we made Rotaract a membership category, it became clear that they were, you know, people who understand us. These are young people who get Rotary. They understand the magic of Rotary, and it was important to bring them into our organization in a higher manner. So I don't think we're going to eliminate the numbers. Numbers are how we measure things, and you know I'm all about measurement, because measurement tells us, are we making any progress? So we're not going to get rid of those numbers, but we have to recognize what the numbers mean. And you heard, you know, Dr. Siba this morning talk about those numbers, and, you know, it's really a mathematical trick, if you will, because we've always had a number of Rotaractors in the world, but now we're bringing them into the numbers of membership. But we still need to look at the overall membership and understand that we need to continue to grow. And yes, we lost Rotaractors last year, but you know what? We lost them the year before, and we lost them the year before that. So I say to Rotaract clubs the same thing, the same message that I give to Rotary clubs. You need to work to make your club irresistible. You want to make it so attractive that people who are on the outside look and say, I want to be a part of that. That is just fabulous. I need to come into this magic. And the people who are already in our Rotaract clubs and in our Rotary clubs will say, I can't leave. This is just absolutely so important to me. It's a value. I've talked to so many people here today who've said, I've been in Rotary for 36 years. I've been in Rotary for 45 years. Well, there's a reason we come back over and over and over again, because we get something from it. So that's what we have to do for the number of people who are coming in. You know, and all of our data says that we have too many people who leave Rotary within the first couple of years. So we're not doing a good enough job getting to know who they are and making sure that we're answering their needs. Because we all come into Rotary for different reasons. Think about Paul Harris. He did not organize Rotary to do service. He organized it because he was lonely. He was in a new city and he didn't know anybody. So he got some gentlemen together and said, let's meet every week. Let's rotate and go from your office to your office. And that's how they got to know one another. And the service came later. The service came later. Some people do come in for service. They hear about the wonderful things Rotary does, and they roll up their sleeves and say, yes, I want to do this. Some people look and say, look at all these business people. I bet if I'm in that Rotary club, I could really learn a lot about my career and advance more quickly and learn things, public speaking and project management. True. And then others look and say, you know, that's a great place. That's for business. I really could develop my business if I come into Rotary. All those reasons are okay. But what we need to do as members of our club is find out what those reasons are. When you find out about your members as they are coming in the door, you're better able to design your programs, your projects, your social activities, and everything that you do, so that you are going to, from time to time, create that value that people want. And when you do that, members are going to stay. So if we make our clubs more irresistible, both Rotaract and Rotary, our membership challenges are going to be answered for that very reason. So.
Now you know why we made a president, right? Steffi, you didn't answer my question. Are we at 1.2 million or 1.4 million?
Officially, we are at 1.4 million.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to Bharat. Bharat, elections in some parts of the world are becoming severely politicized. And I'm going to ask John to comment after that, please. Adding to it is a picture of a losing candidate going to courts on one pretext or another. Can you comment on this? It's not quite your foundation trustee role, but I know you're very competent to talk about it.
Thank you, Ravi, for that very simple and easy question. Let me start by saying that Rotary is a democratic organization. And there are parts of the world where Rotary is growing and growing strongly. And in parts of the world where Rotary is growing strongly, more and more people joining Rotary want to come up into leadership positions. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. More people, I always believed, Ravi, that ambition is not a bad thing. Ambition is necessary to drive a person to become a good leader, to become a successful leader. But how we handle that ambition, that is very, very important, I think. The problem occurs is that differences of opinion become personal differences or personality differences, and then there is a clash. I always believed that in Rotary, as in all spheres, we can disagree, but we can disagree without becoming disagreeable. And when we become disagreeable, that causes all the conflict and that causes all the problems and issues. Another part which I have the firm belief is that when you are in a leadership position in a Rotary, you are in the limelight. The spotlight is on you. It's there on you for 1 year or 2 years or whatever the term you are holding. When that spotlight shifts from you, it is important for you to step down and step back. Not step away from Rotary, but step down and step back and let the other person take that spotlight. I think this is where those issues occur when people want to still control things from behind. People want to get into all those issues, control issues. They are unable to step away from the spotlight. And that is why they force other people to do things which are not proper, not ethical. And that's why all these problems occur. Again, I say Rotary is a democratic organization. Elections are very much part of the democratic process, actually. And there is nothing wrong with having elections. Well, if you feel that you have not been done justice, even a complaint is part of the democratic process. And that is also fine. But once you have exhausted whatever methodologies Rotary provides, I think that's the time to step back and say, okay, I will take it another time. I think having said this, I don't know whether we can put that into our laws or anything like that, but people who go to court need to be dealt with severely, and we should throw the rule book at them, actually.
John.
Thank you, Ravi, and I completely agree with what Bharat has said. That this is what's this session called? No holds barred. So perhaps let me be a little less diplomatic than Bharat was, and share with you my thoughts on this issue. As Bharat said, we're an organization of passionate people. We offer leadership opportunities. That's one of the great benefits of joining Rotary. But passion only isn't exclusive to a certain area of the Rotary world. Raising a lot of funds for the Rotary Foundation is not exclusive to one area of the world. Wanting to advance in the Rotary leadership structure is not unusual not typical in only one or two areas of the Rotary world. Rotarians all over the world are passionate, want leadership positions, give to the foundation, do great projects. But there is one region in the world where we have a unique issue with election disputes, constant bickering, and I would say governance dysfunction. And it's here, right here, in this region. There are 4 countries that represent the vast, vast majority of our election disputes, to a degree that isn't even remotely close to the other parts of the world. And I appreciate I'm being overly frank here, and I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but we have to look ourselves in the mirror and face facts. Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and to a growing extent the Philippines. That is the vast majority of where these election disputes take place. And I, as the General Secretary, perhaps more than anyone in the organization, sees this, because every single one of these disputes, my inbox, copied to the President-elect, and the board at any given time, come to me. And I'm frankly embarrassed for our organization and embarrassed for the regions out of which this is coming, because this has nothing to do with the 4-way test and nothing to do with what our organization is designed to do. I get emails that are pages and pages long, where people are sending me copies of their phone records to show that somebody said somebody an email or text message. It's embarrassing. Long diatribes about who called who said what to whom, who offended who did this, who did that. People memorizing the manual of procedure, detailed legal briefs on what the word should, could mean, whether an email is a notification or not, et cetera, et cetera. This has to stop, because it is a stain on this region which does such great work, which does so much for our foundation, where membership is growing. And where, frankly, this problem is not caused by the vast majority of Rotarians here. Most of them want to do good work, get on with their jobs as Rotarians. But there is a minority here which is putting a black stain on our organization in this part of the world. It has to stop. And how do we stop it? It starts with the leadership in this part of the world. It begins with you, and you know it, and has to end with you. Culture has to be changed, driven from the top. When John Durham was president, he called all of the leadership, senior leadership from this region together. It was so bad, and basically had a come to whatever your religious figure is meeting. And there was a commitment to end this stuff. It didn't happen. Ravi tried to institute when he was led a pilot for election disputes. It didn't work. And so, as Bharat said, election disputes are fine. You can challenge. There's a process within Rotary to do it. Going to court is completely unacceptable. And throwing around the four-way test as if it means something when it really doesn't. Every single email that I get from both sides or 5 sides of the argument, they're all invoking the four-way test. And so I'm being perhaps overly blunt here, but we have to stop this, and it has to start here with this group of Rotary leaders, because it begins and will only end at the top. For the sake of your membership here, for the reputation of this fantastic region, which does so much for Rotary, it has to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat and John, for being so frank, and that's what we needed to hear. And guys, this is our zone. We are responsible for it. And he's been very frank, and I feel very embarrassed. It's time we put this right. All right, let's move on to something else. Steffi, diversity, equity, and inclusion are now corporate buzzwords. They're important reminders that we need to understand and embrace our differences, provide equitable opportunities for success, and welcome another exactly as we are. Now, why is this emphasis now? Were we lacking in DEI previously? And now the board has laid some sort of a quota system for women. Can you tell us more about this? It's straight up your sleeve. You won't have a problem answering this.
So diversity means different things in different parts of the world. But the one place that we can look at diversity and balance is in gender, as you all know. Now, most of the people in the audience, you are or have been business people. Can you imagine your business if it was all one gender? And maybe there are some businesses where it has to be, but in general, we don't do that in our businesses. We bring the best of both genders to an operation because men and women react to the world differently, and the world reacts to men and women differently. Neither one is better than the other. It is just different. And it is why when we have both, we get a better balance. So from that perspective, we do have some work to do, and clearly, up until 1987 or 88, we did have an issue with diversity because Rotary was only one gender. Now that has changed. Now the definition of diversity, as I said, goes beyond gender, and it depends on where you're located. It could mean different things. It can mean race, it can mean perspective, it can mean age, it can mean all sorts of different things. The question that I ask clubs when they wrestle with, how do I know if we're diverse? I say, look at your community. If your Rotary Club or your Rotaract Club mirrors your community, then you have a handle on your future. And if it doesn't, you have a great opportunity. You know where you should be focusing some efforts and making your club irresistible so that that group of people want to become involved. So the second part of your question, Robbie, had to do with quotas. I don't think that what Rotary has instituted by the board is a quota. It is a goal. And there's a difference between those two words. A quota is a mandate. When we put quotas in our businesses, you know, for salespeople, you must meet this quota. It's tied to their performance and their salary. It's a mandate. We don't mandate things in Rotary, or we shouldn't. We should not mandate, because when we try to tell Rotarians what to do, we're going to get in trouble. I don't like anybody telling me what to do in Rotary. I want to be the volunteer that I want to be in Rotary. So a goal is different. It's an aspirational target. And yes, we have an aspirational target to get to a certain percentage of women in Rotary so that we get that gender balance. So I think it's appropriate. I think it's something we can all aspire to, and it will make us better and stronger because it will give us the balance that we need.
Does it also mean that we have a certain amount of women in all our leadership positions?
I'm sorry, what was the end of the
Does it
question?
also mean that we need to have a certain amount of ladies in our leadership positions?
I think it does, yes. I think it does. One of the things that we all have to do, every one of us in the room, as Rotary leaders, whether we are female or male, is to encourage women and young people of both genders to step up to leadership. Step up to leadership.
Thank you. I'm going to have a follow-up question to Nicki. Nicki, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. It's quite simple, really, but I was debating whether I should ask you this or not. How do you think the Rotary world, with its different cultures and traditions, will react if a LGBTQ person was nominated as president? Or for that matter, a same-sex couple, president and partner, were nominated to be president and partner. You don't answer, you don't have to.
You know what, Ravi, I think you've had way too much fun thinking of these questions. I will answer. I will answer on the basis of this, that obviously we are a global organization that represents many cultures, many religions, and I personally love being part of an organization that celebrates that much element of difference. But at the same time, we are united, as we've heard several times this weekend, by a set of core values. And personally, I think it's very important when we get into these disputes and other things to get anchored back into what is it, where we started. Leadership is as much about knowing where you've come from as it is about where you're going to. It's not just a gender issue. It's not just an age issue. I think we don't talk enough about diversity of skill set. And if you go back to Paul Harris and how he started the organization, he started on the basis of networking with people of different skill sets to bring them together, to build a platform of integrity and values-based business proposition so we could each support each other. That is the question I would want to ask. It wouldn't matter to me personally. I'm not sure I can speak for the Rotary world. It wouldn't matter to me personally whatever ethnicity or sexual preference or gender or age a president would be, but I would want to know, what are the skill sets they're bringing to the table? Are they going to represent the entire organization and do their absolute best in the interest of all concerned?
I think that's a fair answer. Well done. John, to you. You have been our chief honcho in the Secretariat for nearly a decade. There are those Rotarians who say the Secretariat runs the show. Then there are staff members who say the opposite, and that senior leaders can be unreasonable and overly demanding. Give us an insight into your relationship with senior leaders and staff and the pushers and pulls that must necessarily follow. In fact, tell us what's the most unpleasant situation you have faced during your tenure as General Secretary and CEO.
Thank you, Ravi. That's actually a very important question. And it's one I had to deal with immediately upon having been elected and selected as your General Secretary back in 2011. Because we do have a unique structure. We're a membership organization. It's your organization, the Rotarians organization, and yet we have a large secretariat, a professional staff that is needed to help move this organization, as Nicki just described it, this global organization with different cultures and languages and approaches, different points of view. I'd say it's one of the most complicated nonprofit organizations in the world. And so when I became your General Secretary, one of the things that struck me coming in from the outside was, at that time at least, and you were on the board at the time, Ravi, so you experienced this as well, there was a pretty big disconnect between staff and volunteers. There's also a big disconnect among volunteers. There was, at the time, a huge rift between the board and the trustees, where the two groups weren't even talking to each other. And so what I noticed when I came in was, from the volunteer side, there was an attitude of, you're just staff. You're just staff. You're hired help. Do what we tell you to do. And from the staff side, there was an equally pernicious approach of, we have our views, And these volunteers come in with their ideas every year, and we just wait it out. In a year, they'll be gone. And we'll find 50, and what I would sort of try to raise, or here's some of the ideas are coming from the volunteer leaders, some which were quite good, some weren't. I was like, well, no, shouldn't we be, rather than finding 50 reasons not to do that, to find 10 reasons why that might be a way to do things. And so it was pretty dysfunctional in my view. And also from a staff perspective, we didn't quite have the quality there that I would have liked. And so my view, since taking this job, has been Rotary will only operate effectively if the four legs of our stool operate as one united team. And those four legs are the trustees, the board, the secretariat, and for lack of a better word, the remaining kind of global governance leadership, meaning RPICs, RCs, all of that sort, that group, training leaders, EMGAs, etc. From a global governance, they all need to be working as one united team. And that's what I had certainly been working with presidential leadership, board leadership. And that's what I've been working with over the years to try to achieve. How do we get that four-legged stool working together? And I know we had a problem because I like to manage by data, not by anecdote. And we started doing very sophisticated employee engagement surveys among staff to figure out where our strengths and weaknesses were. And one of the things we're measuring were volunteer staff interaction among a whole series of other categories. And every single time we did it, staff volunteer interaction came in dead last. And so we tried to get to the point of what was causing all that. And it was, again, the staff was viewed as, you're just staff. So fast forward, I can tell you that we're in significantly better shape now. Very good relations between the board and the trustees, very good relationship between the secretariat and the volunteer leadership. At board meetings, at trustee meetings, staff are invited to speak. There's a recognition that we have an incredibly talented and high quality staff. So for me, that would be my answer. We had issues 10 years ago. I don't think we have those issues today. We're in much better shape. But again, going forward, that has to be the formula and continue to be the formula. All four legs of the stool working as one united team.
Great. I can endorse that. We do have a wonderful relationship with the staff at the moment, and I hope it continues. Bharat, this is to you. As you know, Paul Harris's name is revered amongst many of us. And yet, the foundation, of which you're a trustee, declined to support a generous gift from, I think, some delegates here towards the completion of the Paul Harris Memorial Home, only because the donors wanted foundation credit for the funds. Foundation was losing nothing by allowing this. Yet the foundation declined to support this request, and I'm sure you had good reasons to do so. Can you enlighten us on the reasoning behind this?
And I thought you were my friend, Ravi. Let me start by thanking that group of Rotarians for this wonderful offer of supporting Paul Harris' home, actually. It was indeed, let me mention that it was the Taiwanese Rotarians led by Trustee Frederick Lin who did that. I think that was a wonderful gesture on their part to support the Paul Harris home. Having said that, this was debated hard and long. And I think this is a misconception that it is only the foundation points which led to this generous offer being declined. I think more specifically, we have three funds in the foundation: the annual fund, the polio fund, and the endowment fund. And this contribution, this donation was not falling into any of those funds. It doesn't fall into the annual fund, it doesn't fall into the polio fund, definitely. And a large group of people, it doesn't fall into the endowment fund. So the question was that, how does this get routed through the Rotary Foundation? It was discussed and debated hard and long, and the trustees felt that probably this is not the right time to start another new fund or another new program by which we start doing things. Because today we do this, tomorrow in XYZ, let me take India's name. Rotarians of India will get together and say, okay, we have this opportunity in India, let's all get together and give only to this specifically. Rotarians in Russia may do that. I'm just taking names of the countries like that. And that was the main reason for this generous gift being declined. Having said that, I think definitely there is an opportunity to look more into this, and probably, I am not saying that it will happen, probably rethink may happen, and probably this thing may work out if we find out a methodology by which we can route it through the Rotary Foundation.
Steffi, you want to come in?
Yeah, I do want to add my thoughts on it. Having been a trustee and having been a director, I understand our organization. We say Rotary, but in reality, Rotary has two components. We have Rotary International, which is the side of the organization that handles our structure and administration and operations. And then we have the Rotary Foundation, which is the arm of our organization that creates the magic in the world. Oh, another one died. Another one bites the dust. Better? Oh, okay, whoa. Okay, so, you know, we have Rotary International for all of the administrative parts, and we have the Rotary Foundation, which allows us to do the magic of Rotary, the doing good, and it's where we express our interest in solving problems in the world and the humanitarian service. I am all about preserving the history of Rotary. It's important. It's where we came from. It's not where we are, but it's where we came from. And I'm all for supporting the Paul Harris Home. However, when people make contributions to the Rotary Foundation, they're doing that through their pocket and their heart because they want to change the world. I think it's admirable that there are Rotarians who do want to support our history and keeping the Paul Harris Home in great condition. But I do not think that it's appropriate for that to come through the Rotary Foundation.
John, you want to comment? I can debate with Steffi on that, but I won't.
Does it work?
Yep.
Okay, again, in the spirit of disagreeing while still being agreeable, let me perhaps offer a counter perspective. Just as, again, for background for those who may not be familiar with the issue. Paul Harris's home, which is on the south side of Chicago, was really where Rotary began. It's ground zero for Rotary, where the first meetings were held, where the first, everything, that is really, if there's one place physically in the Rotary world where we began, and it's probably should be one of the most venerated places within Rotary, it's the Paul Harris home. The Chicagoland Rotarians, much to their credit, purchased that home and have now renovated it to the state that it was in when Paul died in 1947. I was 47. They have done a phenomenal job. The last remaining task for the Paul Harris home is to raise an endowment to ensure that that home will remain in Rotary's patrimony and will be available for Rotarians and future generations to come in perpetuity. The Taiwanese Rotarians approached the Paul Harris Home Foundation and indicated that they would be willing to fund that endowment, but they wanted to run the funds through the Rotary Foundation because that's been their practice, to work and help Rotary, the causes it does or whatever, through the foundation. And they asked that they simply be given Paul Harris points for that. I would respectfully disagree with Bharat in this. I know he was reflecting the opinion of the trustees. I think his personal opinion, I'll let him speak for himself, but there is a mechanism, straightforward mechanism, to receive those funds within the Rotary Foundation and then pass them on to the Paul Harris Home as an endowment. What was simply missing was a one-time exception to give Paul Harris points for those Taiwanese, and frankly, any other contribution coming in for a limited period of time, and that's it. And these are Paul Harris points we're talking about. It's not money. It's something we've made up as an incentive for people to give. And so I personally felt that the trustees did not take the correct decision. It was a decision in my view, that was short-sighted, in a way cutting off your nose to spite your face. It was a one-time exception. The money was there. It would have come in. We would have solidified this patrimony for Rotarians for as long as we're around. There aren't 20 Paul Harris homes out there. To the extent that other organizations or other Rotary groups were to come for an exception, I think we can differentiate the Paul Harris home, where we began, the historic place, from other things. And at that point, one could simply say, I'm sorry, we're not going to give another exception. So I don't think it was the correct decision. I very much hope the trustees revisit that decision, because I would like to see the Paul Harris home preserved for as long as our organization continues to exist. Having said that, if there are folks out there that wish to support the home, please do so. Right now, you won't get Paul Harris points. You can't route it through the foundation, but I very much hope that the trustees will revisit their decision, because I think it was not the right decision to make.
Thank you. John, you'll be happy to know that my wife sent $10,000 to the Paul Harris home. But friends, I want you to note something. This is the way we debate things on the board. You can see someone has one view, someone has another view. It doesn't make one person right and the other person wrong. We just go with a majority view, and then we leave the room and we go out and break bread together. And that's how you need to settle your problems in your district. We are running short of time. How much time have you got? Last one? All right, last one. This one, I'm going to ask, I don't know, maybe we'll ask either John or Steffi to handle this, and everyone else comment on this, please. Connect by Rotary is innovative. Instead of joining a Rotary club as individuals, you effectively join at the international level through an online experience. Some of you may not even know about it. We have provided an expensive online platform for like-minded individuals to connect. In 3 years, John, Steffi, Nicki, Bharat, only 300 individuals have joined, and they are not required to pay any dues, and we have spent a hell of a lot of money. Would you consider this a success, and how long are we going to go on with this? Who wants to take this on?
I think John needs to take it, because I don't have the information about the financials, although I know it's expensive. That's all I know. So I'll let John start.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, first of all, let me just frame what the organization is trying to do with Connect and with other initiatives. Clearly now, with the implementation of club flexibility, the COL enactments that allow flexibility, I think we're not at the fail fast and fail often philosophy that venture capitalists have or people have in the high-tech space. But we are in the game of having to think out of the box. We have membership challenges in many parts of the world. We have an aging membership in many parts of the world. We have a product that we're offering that in many parts of the world isn't as attractive as it used to be. Or it's a product that people buy and they try it out, and as Stephanie was mentioning, we have a fairly significant retention issue, where 150,000 people join Rotary and 150,000 leave every year. And so what we're trying to do now is, all of us as Rotarians, okay, let's think out of the box. Let's think if there's different ways we can operate, new club models, different ways of doing things. And so one of the new ideas that we tried out was to say, okay, how do we fashion an offering to potential Rotarians that doesn't involve joining a club? And so this Connect option was developed. We didn't know if it was going to succeed or it was going to fail. But if you don't shoot, you can't score. And not everything will be successful. So we launched Connect, and you're right, Ravi, we haven't had the big uptake. But it was not only just about joining Rotary globally, but it was also a platform to let Rotary clubs post their volunteer opportunities and then have non-Rotarians see that and say, oh, gee, I'd like to go clean up the river tomorrow. That would be it would be a promotion for Rotary, but also a membership generation technique. And what we were finding was clubs were not posting. It was very difficult to incentivize them to do that. So we're now working with another platform that's been developed not by Rotary called Just Serve, that has a much broader reach, much more eyeballs looking on it, and we may need to fold our Connect into that organization's thing. So you're right, Ravi, it was something that was not as successful as we hoped it would be, but you can't win them all. You have to try, and sometimes you will fail. Now, one thing that did work, not because we did it, but we got lucky in the sense that when COVID happened, for the first time, we began to embrace technology, which we had been trying to push for a long time as an innovation. And people were like, no, no, no. Well, it worked because we were forced to, because of COVID, to do that. So it's not been all negative, but this was an attempt to, and again, in terms of the cost, it's been, I think, under $500,000. It's a lot of money, but if you look at it over a 3, 4, 5-year period, annual organization of over $500 million in revenues, it's not a whole lot if you're thinking about coming up with innovative models that will help ensure a greater future for our organization.
Go ahead, Nicki.
Well, one of the things I think that Stephanie mentioned earlier is sometimes you have to have a failure to gain another success. You learn from that. That's one of the reasons why we're going with pilot opportunities to look at ways we can do Rotary differently. One of the things that's most challenging about the board, and I'm sure it's similar for the trustees, is Rotary is not the same in every part of the world, right? We have different needs. We have different beneficiaries, different needs of our beneficiaries as well as our members. One thing that connects us all as leaders is we are really servant leaders. We are there to serve the needs of the members. And something that in Great Britain and Ireland we're doing as part of our pilot was sort of built off the concept of the Connect platform. And it was a way to bring people together in a virtual connectivity beyond the club level. One of the things I think is so sad about Rotary, it breaks my heart about Rotary, is how many people join a Rotary club. They do not realize they've joined Rotary, global Rotary, at the same time for absolutely no extra money. Think how much that diminishes their perceived value. If we can learn from the lessons of COVID and a situation like we're exploring in Great Britain, we can connect people around cause-based passions. People feel valued when their passion is heard, when they have an ability to bring their skills and their passions to the table, regardless of what the Rotary Club they're doing or they happen to join is passionate about beyond their own passion. We don't ask enough about why people join Rotary. We just tell them this is the way it works in this club. If we connect people to their passions through a virtual platform around cause-based initiatives, we have everything to gain. And I think we might see eventually an increase in our membership if we listen to what it is that those members want and what they care about.
Bharat?
So yes, I think Stephanie put it rightly that we've got to make our clubs or in general Rotary irresistible. And we can make it by creating the value of Rotary membership, communicating that value and delivering that value. Probably clearly, John, I think we all admit that Connect probably was not able to deliver that value to whoever was trying to connect it. Having said that, I think, I mean, out of 10 businesses, 5 may fail. So what? It doesn't mean that we don't start anything new. So I think we realize what doesn't work, look back and say, okay, that doesn't work, fine. Let's look at something else which can work and which can deliver the value to the Rotarians and get more members into Rotary and really make them into Rotarians.
Thank you. Our time's caught up, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank this outstandingly brilliant group here. Each one of them, we are proud to have people like this leading our organization. Each one of them skillful, clever. I wish I had half their brains. And you saw the way they fielded some tricky questions, I think, although I said they were easy. Thank you very much, John, Steffi, Nicki, and Bharat.
May I request the moderator and the panelists to kindly stay on the stage. I would request RA Director Faiz, please, to accompany the RA President Jennifer Jones on the stage for the mementos.
fellow Rotarians, this indeed is a no-holds-barred session. One of the core values in Rotary is integrity. We are committed to being honest and transparent about where we are in our journey as an organization and to continuing to learn and do better. The ability to ask thoughtful and clarifying questions keeps the dialogue open. When you feel like making a statement, first maybe we should ask a question. That's what was done today. We do not have to agree with everyone. Being open to another person's point of view doesn't mean you need to align with their position or opinion. It means you have to demonstrate respect for every member's voice. Effective teams care for one another. Fellow Rotarians, we are not a perfect organization. Be open, but if we are willing to try to discuss and be open to try something different, and finally being open to change to keep up with the changing times is the utmost priority in order for us to last in the next century. Thank you very much, President Nominee Stephanie Urchick, Vice President Nicki Scott, Trustee Bharat Pandya, General Secretary John Hewko, and our very, very efficient moderator, past Rotary International President, K.I. Ravindran. Thank you very much for giving all of those thoughts. And congratulations.
May I request the President to present it to the Moderator, token of appreciation. RA President Nominee. Vice President Nicki Scott. Trustee Bharat Pandya. And the key person, General Secretary and the CEO, John Hewko. Thank you. So this is you.